Greetings guys, gals, non-binary pals, and welcome back to another video. As I am sure you are all aware, about a month ago now, in fact I think today it is exactly a month ago now, Suzanne Collins released a new Hunger Games book titled Sunrise on the Reaping. And that was a very long wanted for, anticipated release that shows Haymitch through his games and a bit of his life leading into that. It is well known that Suzanne Collins only releases books when there is something that she thinks is important to say and a message that she thinks is necessary to share. And with this book, the message that she wanted to share and the important thing that needed to be talked about was propaganda and how the media can easily mass manipulate people by not showing the full story, by twisting things, and it's just very easy to manipulate the masses. You have to question everything you see because it is not always as it seems. I could talk about this book for a very long time, and I actually did. So if you are interested in hearing all my thoughts about just this book, then you can check out my video that I just posted on the second channel, Kiwi. I will link it in the description. If you want to hear my thoughts about that, you can check that out. And because this book just came out and because there is a film coming out next year, there are a lot of people who are currently talking about the Hunger Games. I have seen the movies a great many times over the year. I first read the books just before the first movie came out in like 2011, 2012, and I've gone to every movie as it came out. As a teenager, I went to like the midnight premieres of Catching Fire and the Mockingjay movies. I watched The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes the day it came out. Like, I've been invested in this series since the beginning. Or well, since they started becoming popular anyway. I consumed the films so much over the years and only the books when I was 12 and then again when I was 14 and not again until last month. The films became my reality. That was my version of the story and how I perceived and remembered it. And so when I was reading the books, I found some of the changes that were made really, really interesting, and that is especially true for The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. And although I have always been aware that there were a lot of changes made to these films, and I've always been aware of the way we talk about and promote them, it was quite shocking to see some of it and to be reminded of all of these little differences. And so today I really want to dive into that and just talk about the overall perception and promotion of this series. Firstly, it is important to recognize the reflection that this series has on our own society. It shows a society in which a very small amount of the population, the capital, holds all of the wealth and all of the power, and they exploit people for resources. Their society would not function, it would collapse without the hard work and barely compensated for labor of the majority. And this is reiterated multiple times throughout the series as well, being told it is a fragile and delicate system and they need all of the districts, all of these hard-working, underfed, underappreciated, worked to the bone people in order to have the rich elites live their lavish lives. In order for the capital people to feel better about this, they buy into this idea that all of the district people, all of these people who are doing all of this undercompensated for hard labor to provide for them are savages. They are animals. They, deserve the conditions that they're in. They aren't suited to live a civilized life in society. They turn a blind eye to the terrible conditions that these people are working in and just ignore the fact that they are treated so poorly and they're overly exploited because it benefits them too, right? They want to continue living the lives that they do without facing any of the guilt that comes with acknowledging the humanity of the people who are working hard to provide that for them. And the games work by reinforcing this idea over and over by, taking these kids from these districts and parading them around like animals, like products, just completely stripping them of their humanity, locking them into an arena in this space where they are forced to kill each other, which reminds people of the their brutality, the fact that they are not suited for, you know, civilized society, because look at them, they just kill each other. They are brutal. They are living in the past and like will fall into their animalistic nature. It is an exploitative society that completely refuses to be self-aware because it benefits them not to be. A majority of the population is working day in and day out in horrific conditions where they can barely afford to eat. They are brutalized, they are beaten down, they are beaten into submission and told that this is the way life is, there is nothing you can do to change it, and they are too tired to be able to fight against that. The capital uses the suffering of the people for entertainment, and again, as this idea to like disconnect from them, where they watch each other fight and kill each other until there's only one remaining, who then gets to win wealth and a false sense of peace and security between them and their oppressor, whilst separating them from the rest of their peers. And it forces them to go back every single year to, you know, mentor people into this same horrible situation, and watching these kids die and kill each other over and over and over again, with the small hope that maybe this child they are tasked with looking after will come out and join them in this lonely life of false security that is so separate from both the oppressor and their peers. It is a reminder that no matter what you do, there is no winning. You will never have power. You will never have a fraction of what the capital have. You will never have a fraction of what the elite have. You can be given an illusion of it, you can be given just a small taste of it, but they will make you believe that you are able to gain that. All you have to do is sacrifice everything you are. If you want to join the elite, if you want to sit at their table and have their wealth and their power, you need to kill for it. You need to kill every part of yourself, sacrifice who you are in order to gain that. And even then, you will never sit at their table. You will only get what they give you, and that will never be as much as they have. You will always be under their thumb. Every year when the Hunger Games takes place, all of the tributes are given a persona to appeal to the masses. They are hoping that someone will root for the superficial image that they build for themselves and that they put forwards. And this is due to the fact that, as we saw in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes 65 years ago, a young Coriolanus Snow presented the idea that people will tune into the games if they have a stake in them. That watching people kill each other doesn't really have that much of an appeal. You know, you have to have a stake in things if you were going to care. It should be entertaining for people, and a way to entertain people is to have them have a stake in it. If you allow them to, you know, connect with people even on a superficial level and have something involved like placing bets and putting money into it, then more people are going to be engaged. If you are offering to like help prolong the life of someone you quote unquote care about, you are going to be more likely to tune in and you are going to be spending money. And because of this layer, it is then promoting the district kids, the tributes, to play up that persona and to be superficial even whilst in a literal life or death situation. And you see this so much through Katniss's first games, where she spends so much time thinking like, I'm probably on camera right now, so I'm going to do this in hopes of getting a sponsor. They are probably watching me right now, so I have to steal my emotions and change the way that I am looking and thinking right now so that people don't think this about me. I'm gonna do this because that's more likely to win me a sponsor, etc. It like plays a factor in everything. These kids like adopt an actual superficial persona in order to just keep them alive. They are entertainers in a very horrible setting. And in the case of Katniss and Peeta and playing into the role that they have built before going into the games, it is something new to root for, something that hasn't been rooted for in the games before, and that is a love story. Something that is very human, something that everyone can relate to a degree, and something that has never been a factor in the games before. People love a good love story. Like, people love a good love story, especially a doomed one of tragedy. Tragic love stories are the thing that everyone loves and are guaranteed to secure viewers and supporters. It's engaging, it is something to root for, and it is marketable. Love is an ever-present theme in these stories. It starts right at the beginning where you're introduced to love, and it holds up as a main theme throughout the entire series. It is Katniss's familial love for Prim. It is her platonic love for Gale. It is the eventual love for Peter. It is shared with Haymitch in Sunrise on the Reaping, and his love for his mother and his brother, his love for Lenore Dove, his love for Luella, and his eventual love for Maisie Lee. And then there's the love that, like, they share, that Katniss and Haymitch both experience, which is the love for those they feel the need to protect, like Luella and Lulu and Ampit and Rue. They find duty in protecting the people that cross their paths, because when they look at people, they see love. They view people and they see, you know, how loved they are and how much love they have to give. Katniss looks at Rue and she thinks of her sister, and she thinks of how many people love her, and she thinks of family, and she sees people and love everywhere. They look at people and know that they are loved and that that should be respected and cherished. They have nothing else. They've never been allowed anything else. They have been denied of everything their entire lives except for love and kindness. That is what they were born into and brought up on, because that is the only thing that they have. It is what fuels them, and every single decision they make throughout these stories is fueled by love. Life is valuable to them. It is delicate, it is brutal, and they don't have anything except for the values that were instilled in them, which is survival, kindness, and love. Alternatively, in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, we see what love means to Coriolanus, one-day President Snow. He is a corrupt teenager who takes privilege and power everywhere that he possibly can. He does not care for his home, for his friends, or his family. He berates his cousin, who does literally everything for him. He is cruel and he wishes frequent death upon his friend who loves him more than anything. He is constantly lying to people's faces and saying that he loves them, but is constantly just doing everything in his power to get them to love him, because he will gain something out of that. People liking him and loving him is beneficial to him. And then you have the girl that he loves, Lucy Gray, who is nothing more than an item for him to show off. She is a pet project. She is someone that, once again, he can benefit from. He is constantly saying that she belongs to him, and constantly talking about how he owns her and how that makes him feel good. He loves that he owns her, that she is his, and he says it over and over and over again. And it is hard to read. It's really hard to read. That book, like, it hits, and it's horrible being in his head, because it's so twisted, the way that he views everyone and the way that he treats everyone. Just looking at the way that he is powered by greed and by the desire to have power is horrible, really. It's twisted. And, like, he views everything as below him. He only cares if something directly impacts him. Going so far as to attempting to, or possibly succeeding in, killing the girl that he has spent all this time saying that he loves. He has spent so long telling himself that he loves her, telling her that he loves her, but the second she potentially stands in the way of him getting power in the way that he wants, he doesn't just, like, let her go. He tries to kill her. Potentially he does kill her. You spend all this time watching him view her as an item and manipulate and control her, and it is so uncomfortable. It is so uncomfortable to watch, and yet there are so many people who romanticize this relationship and like genuinely like love this relationship and talk about it like it's their favorite relationship in the series. They idolize it, they like shit them in a very real sense, and I think that that is incredibly concerning and shows a massive lack of media literacy, because that is absolutely not the point. You are not meant to root for them. You are not meant to like Snow or this relationship. It is so heavily written into the text that this relationship is not okay and that he is an abusive person who just manipulates and controls everyone. One example of this romanticization that I recently encountered was this article titled "Rachel Ziegler Didn't Just Ruin Snow White, She Ruined Lucy Greybeard First." And in this, she talks about how they ruined the love story between Lucy Grey and Snow in the film, stating that everything else in the movie had been accurate to the book, which is incredibly untrue, but we are going to get into that soon, stating that they changed the love, they messed up the romance of it. They said that in the book, Lucy Grey was a gentle female character that is nearly impossible to find in modern literature, who allowed Coriolanus Snow to take the lead, playing the role of vulnerable songbird who wants to be set free with the help of the boy she fell in love with. Which is grossly misunderstanding the text and the intent, because like we're all seeing this take place through Snow's eyes, right? Like that is very important to stay here. Like you are viewing this relationship through his eyes and how he views her and the situation. And the reason the movie didn't hit so hard and the reason it missed so much of like the relationship dynamic and the way he views people and treats people is just because we didn't have his inner monologue. We didn't have his thoughts and like every aspect of his behavior, which was so crucial to the story. And it means that the movie lost a lot, because we lost a lot when we lost the book. And it's extra concerning that you can have read the book and say the changes in the movie made it less romantic, when objectively the film was much more romantic than the books were, because we had that loss of how Snow was talking about her. Of course, Lucy Grey was a terrified songbird. Like, she was thrown in a cage and starved and sent to die. She was denied all of her personhood. The only people that she had were her district partner, whom she cared about tremendously, and Snow. Snow viewed her as a means to an end. He viewed her as a way to win a prize. He viewed her as a way to get money and further his own power and level up in life. She was a project to him, and he had 100% of the power. He controlled, like, you know, the food that she was able to eat. He controlled, like, her entire circumstances, just about, up until she went into the games. And even in the games, he controlled getting her, like, food and water. He was entirely responsible for keeping her alive, and he absolutely relished in the fact that he had that power over her. And he did not fall in love with Lucy Grey in that. He fell in love with the power he had over her. He fell in love with the way she made him feel, not with her. He just equated the two. He equated that level of power and the level of adoration that was given to him with loving her, you know? And Lucy Grey did love him, but like, she had no one else. He was the only person who treated her like a person. He brought her food, he spoke to her, he treated her like a human being in a time where everyone was treating her like an animal and she was set up to die. She thought that he was bringing her food and this company and this comfort and this conversation because he cared about her and he wanted to keep her alive. And this was true, but it's kind of only half true, because once again, he was doing all of that for himself. Yes, he wanted her to live. He wanted her to live so he could win the money, but also he wanted her to live because he likes the way that she makes him feel. He likes the idea of like owning a person. And that is how she made him feel. Lucy Gray had no power in this relationship at any point. She had absolutely no power. And as soon as Snow thought she had even a little bit of power, like as soon as she could have altered his life in a little bit to a way that he didn't want it to be, he killed her. Like the second she had even a tiny amount of power, he killed her, or attempted to. We still don't know. So, you know, Snow had a person to control and Lucy Gray had a false sense of security. And that was the dynamic of their relationship. And you can see this in the text. You can see all of this happening in the way that he thinks and the way that he feels. You watch all of this and it's so twisted. And throughout all of this, you are also watching the way he treats other people he supposedly loves. Like you can see very clearly that he is not a loving person who does things out of goodness or kindness in his heart. He did love her, but he loved her in a way that is separate to any other type of love we have seen throughout these stories. He loved her in a self-serving way for the way that she made him feel, not for who she was as a person, but for what she could do for him. And it is astounding to me in general that there are, you know, like conservatives who read these books, because obviously that article was written by a conservative woman who is very pro trad wife and wanting like weak women who just want men to take care of themselves and completely misunderstanding the text entirely in a very concerning way. But there are so many conservatives who read and enjoy these books, and it shows such a huge lack of media comprehension that I like cannot even fathom it. Like not only is it with how the relationships are written and shown, but also just the political commentary throughout the entire books. Like I don't know how you can misread that and think that they are at all upholding conservative values. Like that's astounding to me, and I'm so curious to know how anyone is able to interpret them from a conservative viewpoint and think that they are written for them, because there's been like a post going around recently of someone saying like, you can keep author Emily Rath and we have Suzanne Collins. It's like, no, you go. What? What? I'm baffled. Absolutely baffled.
You can't make it up. This Suzanne Collins, right? This is the one they mean, right? Is there another Suzanne Collins I don't know about?
But they're not even the only ones viewing this through a romantic lens. It isn't even just the conservative trad wives who are viewing this in a romantic way. There are a lot of people who view this relationship as romantic and who have entire accounts dedicated to them and making edits of them, etc. Some of it I think is an issue with the film. It is difficult to show everything from the book in the film. And I think if you haven't read the books, I understand a little bit more how you are gathering that, because you aren't getting the entire situation and depth of it, and it is very difficult to display that. They did do some shots in the movie of showing like the power dynamic like on either side of the bars when Lucy Gray is kept in the zoo.
Back to the covey, okay?
And then like when they're standing, Snow is like always towering over her, etc. You know, so they like tried to demonstrate the power imbalance a little bit, but it did miss a lot, and it is very easy to brush over. And once again, love stories are very marketable. It is very easy to look at this and show their relationship and be like, sell it as a love story. Tragic or no, people love a love story and they love having that to root for. And so it benefits them to play it up a little bit and to remove some of the aspects of how terrible that dynamic was between them. And thus we circle back around to the original. As I stated before, love was an extremely central part to this trilogy, Love is what led Katniss into the arena. It is what led her to raising the berries with Peter. It is what sparked the rebellion that ultimately ended the Hunger Games. I think it's really important to note that the act of rebellion that happened at the end of the first games was obviously not done with the intent of starting a rebellion. It was a move made out of love. It was an act of love. But it was not because she loved Peter, but because she knew Peter was loved. She didn't want to go back and face a world where she would have to face the people who loved Peter and were hurt by his absence. She didn't want to take away someone that other people loved and that loved other people. Katniss viewed her own life as worth less than Peter's because she had less people that she loved and there were less people that loved her, and she values life and love the same. She measures worth and life through love. This is why that act at the end with the berries was viewed so differently between the capital and the districts, and why the capital wouldn't understand how that was like, you know, an act of defiance that sparked all of this in the districts, because they viewed it as an act of romantic love. They viewed it as these two teenagers who just, you know, were doomed and they just wanted a chance to be together, because that is what they can comprehend. That is how they understand love. They cannot understand a love that runs so deep with community as what Katniss and the other people in the districts experience. There is a love that is so entwined with life itself that these people in the capital don't understand because they are living in an individualistic society. Whereas in the districts, they also understand that it is about love and they see that it is about love, but they also see the depth to that and they can relate to that depth. They see a willingness to die for someone that you love. They saw Katniss volunteer for Prim knowing that she had effectively no chance of winning. But they saw her sacrifice herself to save someone that she loves. And then she saw herself, you know, willing to die trying to get the medicine to save Peter, another person that she cared really deeply for. And then they watched how much she loved Rue and what she was willing to do for Rue. And then at the end with the act of the berries, the final stand of like, I'm willing to sacrifice myself once more for someone that I love. They see a 16-year-old girl who was made a promise, who was told that she would be able to leave this place with a person that she cared about, and they watched that promise be broken, and they watched the unfairness of all of that, and they watched her do something about it. She was promised that they could leave together and that they could experience love and return to their families and the love that their communities have, etc. And she was willing to die for that, and so was he. It is showing people that love is worth dying for, that the love of your family, your friends, your lover, your community, they are worth dying for. You just have to be brave enough to try. Love was the act of defiance. And Snow comes in and says, you know, like, the people in the districts aren't convinced that it was out of love. They saw it as an act of defiance, and tells her to convince him that it was about love. But it was all a farce, obviously, because it was an act of love. Snow knew it was an act of love. Everyone knows it was an act of love. Just not in the shallow way that the capital thought it was. And it is impossible to convince the districts that it was a shallow decision that was made, because that is not how they experience love. What is important about this is how we market and talk about these books, and in particular the movies. The conversation around it is so often centered around love, but it is centered around the love story. It is specifically around Katniss and Peter, Katniss and Gale, the love triangle. Who will you pick? Do you like her with Gale? Do you like her with Peter? What's the situation with the romance happening in these books? You should find out. Let's see how it's going. It was played up so much. Like, the love triangle was played up so much during the initial promotion of the movies when they were coming out. And granted, I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that they were coming out alongside Twilight. Obviously, Twilight very much is a love triangle used loosely, of like Team Jacob or Team Edward. So they like adopted the same strategy. And I don't quite, it's not entirely like the film promotion that was the problem. Like, the people who are actually making like the posters for these movies are stunning, but like news outlets and the way that the consumers were talking about it and promoting it was very heavy on the, who is it gonna be? Are you Team Gale or Team Peter? What is the love story? And a massive focus on that, which, you know, kind of greatly undermines a lot, and also is exactly what the Capitol does. Although the relationships between Katniss and Gale and the relationship between Katniss and Peter are incredibly important, obviously, but they are not central to these stories. Like, they are not everything. They are not the most important relationships, or at the very least, like, especially like the relationship between them is like, they are very, very important, but not in the way that they were being portrayed. Like, but the love between Katniss and Peter specifically is like so much more than just like that romantic connection. It is so much bigger than that. And it's made into such a shallow thing rather than like engaging in all the depth that it has. When you take these relationships out of context, you are completely like removing so much of the importance and the depth of what they mean and how they impacted Katniss specifically. They are both important in their own right, in their own different ways. And they are not a competition. They're not in competition. The only one who views them as a competition is Gale. And Gale views them as a competition because of his life. You know, he has grown up in a society in a way where like everything is a competition. He has to live his life trying to survive. Everything is a fight. He has had to fight every day of his life. So it makes sense he views this as a competition. Is that right? No. Do I have my issues with Gale and how he treats the situation and treats Katniss and the way he feels about her? No. But I do understand it based on the circumstances, and I'm not going to diminish the relationships that they have just because it suits me to instead stand over here and be like, Team Peter, you know? Peter is different in that sense because he grew up privileged, or as privileged as you can be in the place that they live. And so he just accepts what he thinks he deserves and wants everyone to be happy because he has not had to fight for his life every single day. So not everything is a competition and not everything is a fight. When we remove all the context of these stories and we remove the depth of those relationships and take them to such a shallow stance of just looking at the relationships on their surface level and making it into just a teenage love story and like promoting it as Team Peter or Team Gale, we are acting as the Capitol do. We are turning the Hunger Games into a gimmick. We are turning it into something that we can watch and relate to while removing all the aspects that are difficult to watch and focusing just on the more shallow, gimmicky level of it. It waters down the intention and it undermines the depth of the love that exists within the heart of the story, and it makes it digestible and entertaining and comfortable, and it makes the necessity of the political conversation secondary to the characters that we are rooting for. When I watched the film adaptation of The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes for the first time, it had been a year or so since I had read the book, and I'd forgotten most of what happens. You know, I have a terrible memory. It takes me typically like 2 reads of a book to actually like retain everything properly, which is why I love doing my rereads. But anyway, I only really remembered some like, you know, I had like the vague outline of the story and I knew some sort of feelings, but I was missing a lot of the like actual stuff that happened. I just knew like key points that existed. And when I reread it a month ago, I was so taken aback. I was so taken aback by like how much had changed, because I watched the film I think 5 times between when it came out and when I did my reread. And so like, I was shocked when I was reading the book, especially though, like especially during the period of the book that was focused around the games. It was so startling to be reminded how much they changed this section, because it once again speaks volumes to how we, the consumers, so much reflect the capital. In the movie, the games are interesting. They are entertaining, meaning they are brutal from the start. Alliances form quickly, tributes run to the tunnels, but there are cameras in the tunnels and there are people being killed straight away. There are people who have teamed up, there are people who are already killing each other, people are dying, people are violent, there is blood from the beginning. None of that happened in the book. Like, none of that happened in the book. In the book, the games had an incredibly slow start. No one wanted to be there. Several of the tributes were dead by this point. Half of them were starving because they weren't fed for like weeks, up until like the day before when they got like a sandwich each. They were sick, they were starving, they were tired. This was when the games were still new, so the careers didn't exist. Like, the kids from District 1, 2 and 4 were better off because they exist in districts that are more well fed and have a bit more money, but they didn't form alliances. The careers did not exist at this point. No one was training to go into the games. They were all just scared, hungry children who did not want to be there, who did not want to kill each other, and put that off as much as they could. In the books, you barely even see Lucy Gray during this period. She is underground in the tunnels. There are no cameras down there. You are not aware of her. She is just chilling out there, and Snow's watching, being like, I hope she didn't die. Hope she didn't die down in those tunnels. I really need her to come out because I want to send her some water. She must be struggling down there. And she only comes out a couple of times in short bursts. She barely exists in the games because she is a scared child who does not want to be there and just wants to go home. Been sitting here filming for an hour and I look across and I realize that my microphone came disconnected right at the beginning of when I started filming, and I did not notice until now, so I apologize for the terrible audio for the entire video, but you know, we have the microphone working now. Apologies, and I'm gonna carry on with better audio now. I spent the book constantly surprised by the choices that were made in the games and how different they were. I was so shocked by how the film took those and they made them more entertaining by making them more bloody and giving us more violence and making them more brutal, thus exciting. In the book, during the game section, we were shown much more of Coriolanus's life. You know, in the film, we got just a lot of the games being the exciting thing that they were, whereas in the books, we got so much more of him, his thoughts, his actions, his relationships. We got to see more of who he was as a person. We got to see more of his interactions with those around him and how he thought about them, and got to see his selfishness and his greed and how much he had a desire just for power. They cut so much out of the books just to show more eventful games, and I don't know, to make Snow more likable, palatable. I don't know why they thought so much of it was unnecessary. I know that there is a cut of this film that is a whole like hour and a half longer, and I'm so curious about what made it into that and what was cut because it was deemed unnecessary for the story. But there were a few things that were missing that I thought were so good in the book and did such a good showcase of Snow's character that I really think would have added to the film and shown more about how evil the Capitol were and how evil Snow was himself. And that was like seeing him and Clementia. So seeing Clementia be bitten by the snake, and Snow is told, you know, he can visit her, he can talk to her, she doesn't want to be alone, whatever, and he doesn't, because he feels guilty and he wants to evade his own guilt, and he doesn't want to be on the bad side of like Dr. Gall or anyone who can give him a boost, so he avoids her completely. He doesn't want to deal with that. He is not a good person. She is supposedly one of his best friends, and he's like, yeah, but like, I don't want to. visit her or deal with her. I am busy with my own thing trying to win money. We also don't get to see the funeral for Arachne Crane. I don't remember how to pronounce her name, so apologies there. Which does in fact happen before the games, but I thought was like a really important thing to show. And there was a funeral held for her where, you know, they were broadcast on TV. Snow sung the anthem for her. It was like a massive thing. And they drove the tributes by, all the living tributes, in like a cage. And then they were dragging the dead tributes through the streets. And I thought that this was a really good thing to show. Like, just, again, to display how they view the tributes versus how they view the people in the capital, and just like constantly promoting the idea that they are animals, they are savages, and they are so separate from the capital people. And it also didn't show all of Snow's relationship with Sejanus and his family, because he spent a lot of time just trying to get money out of his family, thinking that he was owed it, that he deserves it. And he did a lot to, you know, try to win favor with them in order to try to get money out of them. He viewed Sejanus very much as someone that he could benefit from whilst playing friend too. But, you know, why would they show us that when they could show us, what, like 45 minutes of kids fighting? Like, we can see brutal violence. So why don't we just show the brutal violence instead of showing the depth and intricacies of relationships and the horrors that are Coriolanus' Snow's thoughts and actions? It's so funny too, because as I was reading this, I was texting Kat as I was going, being like, when does this happen? I keep expecting this to happen. Why this hasn't happened? This wasn't in the book. This wasn't in the movie. They took this out. They changed this. And I even said, I was like, I understand why they did it though, because it makes it more entertaining. They had to make it more entertaining to watch. And that really caught me off guard, you know, that really got me thinking, because like, why is it that violence equals entertainment? Why did I look at those games and all the parts that were and were not included and go, well, they obviously had to change it because they had to make us watch? Because that is exactly the thinking of the capital. Right? The more violent, the better. The more violence, the more people will tune in. And so, you know, that's what the movie makers were thinking as well. How do we make this more entertaining? How do we get more people to watch? And the answer was the exact same as the capital, which is more violence, more bloodshed. And it works. I remember when Sunrise on the Reaping was first announced, and I saw so many tweets about the Hunger Games because, you know, these things come around. We all have been watching and reading the Hunger Games for over a decade now. And there was so many people who were excited about this book, as was I, and then talking about more Hunger Games content that they want. There was like a massive conversation about all the content that they were looking forward to, that they want next. And one of those things that I saw come up an alarming amount was people asking for like a TV show of all of the games. They want a TV show where every episode is a different games. No story of the characters, none of that, just the Hunger Games. There were dozens of people like tweeting this and making TikToks about this, and then like thousands of people liking them. And I just have to ask, why? Why is that something that you want? Like, how are you missing the point so horrifically in which you are asking for just the Hunger Games? Not the story, not the characters, not the political messaging, nothing. You just want to watch children kill each other brutally. And the excuse is just, it's fiction, it's entertaining. But why is it entertaining? Why is that something that you enjoy watching? Like, yes, it is fiction. Sure, they are actors. They get up at the end of the day, they wash off the cornstarch and the food dye and can go to bed comfortably that night. It's not real. However, it is desensitizing us to real violence. We see so much violence every day, and it is just shared without a thought. We are surrounded by violent imagery and real violence and horrific things. And so many people can just look at it without even blinking because we have become so desensitized to it. And the fact that like we can sit here and just demand for things to be more violent for our own entertainment whilst overlooking real violence that is happening and like not even blinking at it because of how much we are demanding to see it in our fiction is kind of scary. You know, like we have made the image of death so consumable. We have made it so nothing. Like it is just a normal thing for us to be constantly watching, and it's just easy to see happen. And these books are a warning for that and talking about how we can fall so easily into this trap of just watching children die brutally and being able to move on from it, being able to watch it without feeling anything, being able to watch death as entertainment. The movies blur the line so heavily of that message because they are playing that up and playing into the hand that we have of violence being entertaining. And that really takes away from that important messaging in the books. Some things that were left out of the films that have never sat quite right with me is the lack of injuries and disabilities. After the original games in the books, Peter loses his leg. That is an important part of the story. It plays a role in things that happen in the second book and specifically in his second games. Like it is an important part of who he is and of his character and his story. And it's not a difficult thing to include either. Like you don't even have to show it because you can have a prosthetic and like cover it by wearing trousers and whatnot, right? Like you don't even have to show it. You can just say that it happened. There was absolutely no need to remove that disability. And they do this to a lot of ailments as well. Like in the first games, Katniss loses her hearing for a period of like several days. And that is a massive deal because she is a hunter. She relies on her hearing, and that was terrifying for her. She did have a temporary disability which really greatly affected her and terrified her. It also removes a lot of just like injuries and the ramifications of violence that has happened to them. Like they are perfectly happy to up the blood when it comes to violence and the violence that is happening, they will show us that. But when it comes to injury, it's not as palatable. They have to be beautiful if we are expected to watch, right? Like we can't be having the stars with blisters and ointment on their faces or having several skin grafts after surviving an explosion. They have to be unmarked and able-bodied and perfect. They remove so much of the result of war. They are constantly clean and beautiful and unmarked. And that is so unrealistic. And I think really takes away from like the actual hardship of war. It's really interesting of like in the games, they show them like killing one another, and that is viewed and that is brutal and that is bloody. But when they get injured, like in the fog and they're covered in blisters, in the movie, it's just gone immediately. In the book, they're covered in like the remains of that and putting ointment on, and it looks dirty. And then you have them going into war and they're like injured, but they're always clean. The injuries are always hidden. They always look well put together. And I find it really interesting that they don't show like the horror of war on their own skin. You know, like at the end of the war, Katniss is so badly burned that she has countless skin grafts and she doesn't recognize herself. Like war leads to injury, not just death and like clean death of people that you love, but it also like leaves a mark on you, both physically and mentally. And I find it really strange that they completely just erased that and they are constantly very clean and like they are very well put together. Like war isn't taking a physical toll on them. This goes down into mental health as well. For example, in the Mockingjay book, there was a lot of time dedicated to Finnick and his mental well-being. He was very, very emotionally unwell for so much of that book. He was a patient at the hospital pretty much the entire book, being treated for his mental health. He was not doing well at all. And I think that that was such a good display of the trauma that they are experiencing. He was being like consumed by anxiety, and he and Katniss bonded over that. They had a very strong friendship in that book because they bonded over that trauma. They bonded over that fear. Katniss in the movie has, you know, her panic attacks and things do happen, but it was much more frequent in the book. And she had people who related to that with her. And Finnick was like mentally very unwell. And they just removed that from the story in the movie. He had like, you know, they showed him having some like anxious habits, like with his string, but they never showed that he was struggling. He seemed put together the entire time. It's important to show that you can be struggling mentally and emotionally and still be a strong person. And I think that like there was no need to cut out how much she was internally struggling, because that was an important part of her and her story. And like it's important to show people, you know, that like these are the things that exist. She's a teenager, she's a child. It's a lot of pressure. That's another thing that goes under acknowledged, is the fact that Katniss is only 16. She is 17 by the end of this series. Like in the films, it is incredibly easy to forget this because Jennifer Lawrence is in her 20s. These actors are older than the characters that they are playing. So you can look at them and you think that they're older. But it's not only the fact that the actors are older, but it's that they remove so much of the childlike tendencies of these characters. Like in the books, they have moments where they have fun. They like play a prank, or they are doing things that make them laugh. They are having small moments of joy in these really dark times. They have conversations that like I read and I was like, God, yeah, they are teenagers. I almost forgot that they're teenagers. Listen to the way that they are interacting with each other. And they just remove so many aspects of them being kids and having fun. And this is something that happens a lot in adaptations, especially like live action adaptations. Other places where there's examples of this is the Avatar: The Last Airbender live action. And I just finished watching the Percy Jackson TV series, which does it as well, where they remove so much of these characters that make them kids. They take these kids who are kids being put in these horrible situations that they should not be put in, where they have the weight of the world on their shoulders, and they try to make you forget that they're kids. They remove their childlike tendencies. They remove any fun that they have. They take out the core of who these characters are because they want you to forget that they are children. It distracts you from the horror. And these kids are under so much pressure in these situations. Like, these are children. The entire point of these stories is that they are children. It's meant to be shocking and heartbreaking that these are kids that is happening to. Like, yes, it's part of it is that they are made for children and they want children to read themselves, you know, but it's also specifically in the Hunger Games very much you are meant to know they are children, and you are meant to be horrified by the fact that these are children. And if you are removing those things that make them children and like aging them up in order to make people more comfortable, it is completely missing the entire point. This story is not meant to be digestible. You are meant to be uncomfortable and angry and upset while you were watching them. The Capitol do something very similar to this, right? Like, it is important for the people of the districts to remember that these are children going into the arena. They take their children. They are reminded and told every year, we are taking your children. These are your children. And it's important for them to know that because, you know, that's the point. It's to punish them and remind them of what they've done and telling them to never stand up for themselves ever again. So they need to know that they're children. But it is best if the Capitol views them otherwise. They want the games to be watched. They want the games to be celebrated. So they try their best to dehumanize them and make you forget that they are children. They dress them up as products. They give them fake personas. They sexualize them. They do everything they possibly can to make the people forget that, not only to forget that they are children, but to forget that they are people, period. They do everything they can to make the people of the capital feel comfortable with this idea, to make them comfortable with seeing children being put into these situations, and that is to make them forget that they are children. So many people sell and consume this media in a way that would make the capital proud. From love triangles down to selling tickets for a live production of the story where they are separating the seating into districts and charging more for the career pack districts. It's so easy to consume things without applying yourself, reading only what you want to read and ignoring what makes you uncomfortable. It is so easy to just look at things on the surface and not dig any deeper because you don't want to feel uncomfortable. But doing that with the Hunger Games is incredibly impressive. Honestly, I applaud you. If you were able to miss the point of the Hunger Games so badly, it takes a real talent to be able to ignore that because they are so on the nose. I genuinely, truly cannot fathom how you can read these books and come away with anything that isn't anti-capitalism, anti-oppression, and being pro being a submissive woman. I don't know how you can read these books and come away with that. It's mind-boggling to me. It is so blatantly obvious. It is so important that we think deeply about the media that we consume and that we hear other people's perspectives and share our own. We all interpret things slightly differently because we have different lives, we have different experiences, we come from different places. I may have read these slightly differently to someone else because of who I am and how I view the world and what my experiences have been. But I think ultimately, the core of the story stays the same. We just apply it to ourselves slightly differently, which is why it is so good and so important to have these conversations and to talk about these things with other people. And that's something that I love so much about fan culture online, right? I am on book Twitter, and so I've seen so much conversation around the Hunger Games and Sunrise on the Reaping recently, which has been so good because I've seen how other people consume these, and I've noticed things that I didn't initially notice myself because I wasn't looking for that. You hear other perspectives and you're able to build on your own view of these characters, of this world, of the messaging. And if you are just consuming something and then not allowing yourself to expand on that or dig deeper, you are missing out on so much. It's such a beautiful part of humanity to be able to share these experiences with people and to be able to learn and develop your understanding of life further. We can learn so much from each other. We can learn so much from, reading books, from watching movies, but we learn even more when we discuss those things with other people. In saying all of that, it doesn't change the core messaging of these stories. It's impossible to miss the actual core of what these stories are trying to convey. If you are somehow able to miss the core messaging of these stories, then you are so far separated from reality, and I need you to have conversations with people and read more about other perspectives of these books and try to understand what they are actually saying. I think that if you are unable to read the realities and complexity that is written into all of the pages of these, then you are going to benefit the most from these conversations, and you need to look outside of yourself and see what other people are saying, have these conversations, maybe reread them and rethink about your perspective, because it is so important to actually understand the text and think deeply about the text. Be aware of how you talk about things, how you are consuming things, and how you are being sold things. Think about the things that you consume deeply as you consume them and afterwards. And please do not forget to ask questions and have conversations. It is such an important and beautiful part of life, and of humanity. A massive thank you to my Kiwi Cat patrons: Stella, Trippy Day 27, Bay the Trucker, Chastity, Beckett, Prismatic PT, LJ James D, MA Ping the Games, Blaze, Uh-Oh It's Craiglow, Phil the Duck, Jesse A, River, Queen Glimmer, Ella, Lady Nutbar, Mr. Noodle, Rabsack, Knitting Menace, Samuel, Chris, Ellie, Alexis, and Bobby. I love and appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for joining. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram, The Queer Kiwi, and Twitter, That Queer Kiwi. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe. Keep fighting. I love you. Mwah.
When you close your eyes